Audible. And
Yes.
good afternoon, everyone. Welcome for the second session of the second day of National FDP on empowering academicians and researchers in the mastering grant writing and quality publication. For introducing Dr. Vinod Tiwari sir, I call Dr. Ramu sir to introduce Vinod Tiwari sir. Ramu sir, please.
So very good afternoon, all the registered delegates. Hi, sir. Very good afternoon, sir. So myself, Dr. Ramu Samini, working as an assistant professor in School of Pharmaceutical Sciences, Sandip University. It's my privilege and honor to introduce our distinguished guest and today's eminent speaker, Dr. Vinod Tiwari, sir, to the registered delegates. Dr. Vinod Tiwari, sir, is currently working as an associate professor of pharmacology in the Department of Pharmaceutical Engineering and Technology, IIT, Varanasi. Dr. Vinod Tiwari sir completed his PhD in pharmacology from University Institute of Pharmaceutical Sciences, Punjab University, Chandigarh in the year of 2012. Before pursuing his doctoral studies, Dr. Vinod Tiwari sir worked as in Nicholas Permal Research Center, Mumbai from 2007 to 2008, where he contributed immensely to the drug development projects related to the pain, inflammation, and arthritis. Dr. Vinod Tiwari sir carried out his postdoctoral research from 2012 to 2016 with Professor Srinivas N. Raja, Director of Pain Research at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, Maryland, USA. During his postdoctoral studies, he worked on dissecting the key neural circuits which are involved in the pain relief and drug abuses. Before joining IIT Varanasi in April 2018, Dr. Tiwari sir also worked as an assistant professor of pharmacology and toxicology at NIPOR, Ahmedabad from August 2016 to March 2018. Dr. Vinod Tiwari sir is currently working in the field of pharmacology and neuroscience with more than 18 years of experience with research interest focused on behavioral and molecular neurosciences with more than 95 international publications in the peer-reviewed international journals. Moreover, he served as a editorial board member and also acting as a reviewer for various esteemed international journals which are comes into the Elsevier and SCI journals. His lab is well funded with grants and funding from SER, ICMR, MHRD, and industrial consultancy projects. He is currently working on different collaborative projects with investigators from Johns Hopkins University, the Russian Academy of Neuroscience, with the clinicians and pharmaceutical industries in India. With over 4,763 citations and with an H-index of 38, he has made a significant contribution to the field of neuroscience and pain. Dr. Vinod Tiwari sir is a coordinator of Varanasi chapter of the Society for the Neurochemistry, India. He is a dedicated member of the IAN, IASP, JNS, and different bodies which are mainly comes under this pharmacology sector. He is going to organize the IBRO APRC Neuroscience School in the October 2024. Further showcasing his impactful contributions to the field, I want to conclude Dr. Vinod Tiwari's commitment to advancing the scientific knowledge and addressing the critical gaps which are involving in the pain and neuroscience research, showcasing his dedication and the betterment of health care across the globe. With this little introduction, I welcome and Dr. Vinod Tiwari sir to take over the section. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rama, for the kind introduction.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that. So I congratulate the organizer of this meeting, to organize such a thoughtful workshop, faculty development program on academic and scientific writing. I think which is a need of the hour, as most of the faculty members, from different parts of the country have joined us today. So I think it's a very relevant topic for today's, I would say, discussion, when one is supposed to know how to write the impactful publications, and at the same time one should also know how to write the grant proposals, because most of the time uh, we are, as a scientist, as a researcher, we are doing a lot of good research in the lab, and our findings are highly innovative, but we don't know how to pen it down in the form of a paper publication which can make a significant impact and can help the scientists who are working in different parts of the world in the same area. So I think this workshop is the need of the hour, and a very relevant program. So I will share my screen with all of you. If you have any questions, feel free to note it down for the end of the discussion section. So I know most of the speakers are going to talk, like around the same topic, but I just thought that I will try my best to make sure that, I would like to deliver something different to my audience today. So mostly about, like this part, which I'm going to talk to you today is mostly about the writing the publication. Maybe someone else, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, we'll talk about the grant writing. So both these aspects of scientific writings are very, very, very important, as I told you previously. Uh, so the questionnaires, I thought, when I was preparing this talk, I thought I will just prepare, few questionnaire for all of you before I start my talk, so that it's a kind of brainstorming for you, like why you are attending this workshop. So the first important point, which as a faculty you should think of, why publication writing is important. Next question, what are the different types of publications? Many times we just know about the two types of publication, research and review, and we don't know that there are other forms of publications as well, which are there and which are important in their, in their own terms. Then the next important question, which many people are not able to figure out, how to identify the right journal for your manuscript. Many times the work is very impactful, very relevant, but the failure to identify the right journal sometimes makes the work, less meaningful, and sometimes it is getting rejected again and again without giving the due weightage to that work. Next question, which is very, very important in today's world, is regarding the plagiarism. That is something, which should be, discussed and highlighted, and people should be sensitized more and more about this aspect, because in today's era of, science, people are running in a kind of rat race where they want to publish more and more in a limited period of time, and sometimes, intentionally and sometimes unintentionally, they compromise the standards and they fall into the trap of plagiarism. So I would like to talk a little bit about this aspect as well, how you can make sure that you can write a effective, manuscript by making sure that you don't, fall into this, plagiarism issue. Then why should, so this grant component I'm not going to discuss in today's topic of discussion. Maybe someone else will cover it, but if some other time we can discuss more about it. So so this is a Darwin's quote which I have, mentioned here for all of you. A naturalist life would be happier one if he had only to observe and never to write. Just imagine, if somebody don't have to, write anything and just have to do experiment, observe, note down the observation, and don't have to do anything, right? But in science, this is not the case. Doesn't matter how spectacular, how significant, how beautiful your results are. The work is not completed until the results are published in a scientific journal. So let's explore the different steps which are there, starting from the rough manuscript draft to the final published paper. So the first step is planning your manuscript writing. The question is why to publish? That should be the first question which you should ask yourself before you are ready or before you even want to publish your work, right? So publishing is just not only the requirement of different, like I was saying, institute requirement, it is also a matter of responsibility as well. So publishing responsibly is more important than publishing something. So publishing is one of the necessary steps which is embedded in the scientific research process. And we all know that it is also necessary for graduation. At many institutes, UGC has recently waived up the guideline for publication to get the PhD degree. But at many other premier institutes like IITs or NIPERS or, other institutes all over the India, like, they still have this mandatory requirement of publishing at least 2 to 3 articles in reputed, Scopus Index, Index scientific journals. And it is also important for the career progression of the faculty members. Even at IITs, when we have to apply for the promotion here, at that time, they will see whether you have a definite number of publications in your CV or not in that, in that period of time. Now, next is what to publish and what not to publish. That is very, very important. If you are not able to differentiate between this, then maybe you are just going in the wrong direction. So any result which is new and original, or any methodology which is also new, that can be published. Any reviews or summaries on a particular subject which is recent or up to date, that can also be published. Apart from that, the manuscripts that advances the knowledge and understanding in a certain scientific field, those are most welcome and should be published. Now, at the same time, there are certain reports or work which has of no scientific value or no scientific interest, So that is just a crap to the scientific society. So there is no need to publish that kind of work. The work is already out of date. That is also not supposed to be published. Look, whenever we are talking about the research work or planning the or designing the experiment or generating new hypothesis, for our graduate student or for our new research grant, we always talk about the novelty. And novelty is not just about, like changing some, just small things in the piece of puzzle. It is more than that. And we'll talk about that in the later part of the presentation. But it is very, very important that you are not working on an area which is already out of date, and there is no novelty in that. Duplication of previously published work, that's very, very important, to figure out whenever you are designing your project, your grant, you need to make sure that this kind of work has never been done before. And you also need to make sure before publication that it is not the duplication of already published information. Sometimes, we have some, negative data, or the data which is, out of the way. In scientific world, unfortunately, nobody accepts the negative data, but I always encourage my students, I personally encourage them, if you're getting a negative data, then it is not bad. Negative data also has a value, but the problem with negative data is that sometimes people are not sure, especially the journals. There is one journal of negative findings, which accept the negative research as well. Because I personally feel that negative research or negative data is also very, very important, because that can save the time of a lot of people who are working in the same area. So they will not repeat the same kind of experiments or same kind of area they will not work on if that is already published that this doesn't work or this doesn't go in this particular manner. So those kind of findings are also very important. But the problem with the negative data is that why journals don't accept it. Somebody may have this question, but the question is that when you are getting there are a lot of variable factors when you perform the experiments, and you try to do all the experiments in highly controlled environment where you try to minimize the variable factors, and you try to change one variable and then check the effect on the bee, and then you change the other variable and then check the effect what is happening. That is how we conclude something. So when the results are positive, it is working as per your hypothesis, you think okay, it is fine, it is going well, everybody will appreciate and will accept it, right? But when something goes wrong and the data is negative, then people have a lot of concerns regarding the methodology, regarding the stringent criterias, or regarding other conditions. So in that case, it becomes very difficult to understand. The negative result is because they are supposed to come in this manner only, or there are other reasons for that. So those are the issues which you know makes people hesitant to accept the negative results. But I always tell my students, you should not hesitate with the negative data and the negative results, because they are also very important findings. And then they tell you that, okay, there is something else which we are overlooking and we should look after that. Okay. Then, of course, you need a good manuscript to present your contribution to the scientific community. That is the bottom line. Okay. If you have done something and you want to showcase to the world, okay, you have done something relevant, then for that you need a good work, good manuscript. Now, questions to answer before you write what you are supposed to ask. The most important question you should ask yourself: is it new? Is it interesting? Is it a current hot topic where people want to work? Next question which you should ask yourself, whether whatever experiments you have performed or in your project, whether by utilizing those experiments or procedures or methodology, have you provided the solution to some of the novel and the difficult problems? If that is the case, then are you ready to publish at this point? Means, do you have the enough data to conclude your findings or to justify the hypothesis which you have prepared at the beginning of your work? So when you have answer to these questions and all the answers are in yes, in that case, you should go ahead and write your manuscript, right? So if your work is outdated, incorrect conclusions, if it is duplication of previous published work, that means this work has no scientific interest and it should not be published. But whenever the results are original, findings are novel, and it is making significant addition to the existing knowledge, and it is an up-to-date review of a current subject, then that means this work can advance the current field in that particular area and should be published as soon as possible. Now, what makes a strong manuscript? That's a very, I would say a very obvious question. Like, many people write a manuscript, but most of the time you will find that 70 to 80% of the people, they just are in hurry to publish their work. They don't care about what kind of language they are using, what kind of presentation they are using, and how they are compiling their data. So all these things are supposed to be the part of the training in the college itself, I would say, when the students are pursuing their undergrad or postgraduate degree. At least at postgraduate degree, this should be a subject of discussion or their syllabi, where they should understand, how to, make your work more interesting, more presentable, basically. Okay. So a very clear and useful and message should be very, straightforward and exciting. It should be presented in a manner and should be constructed in a logical manner which can allow the readers to easily grasp the significance. You can just imagine, your manuscript is a good manuscript if it can be understood by a layman. Layman means a person who doesn't belong to your field of interest. If he or she is reading your paper and finding it interesting and able to grasp the concept which you want to present, that means your manuscript is really great. Always remember, editors, reviewers, and readers, they all want to receive a well presented manuscript. The chances of rejection will be less if you write each and every part of your manuscript very carefully and very diligently. Now, what are the different kind of manuscripts which you can write? I'm sure most of you are faculties in different parts of the institutes of our country, and you already having an idea about the types of articles or the types of manuscript. But just for your understanding, so we have full-length articles which are known as the original articles. So we also call them research articles. So these are the full-length papers in which you carry out some research in your lab, whether computational based or some wet lab work, and then you have some hypothesis and then you're trying to answer the question by different methodology. And once you have the data with you, then you can compile the article in the form of original research full-length article. So that is one form of article which is very popular. The second form of article is the rapid communication, or you can also call it short communication, or in other name people also call it letters. So letters or rapid communication are the shortest form of the original article, where you are trying to publish some novel information, but the length of the article is much shorter than the full length article. And there are several journals, like one journal is BBRC. Okay, that's a very fast journal, and it only accepts the short communication. You cannot, you know, publish like 10 figures or 12 figures. You just need 3 to 4 figures with further sub panels, and that they generally give the decision within 1 week of submission. They're very fast. but they only accept the short communication. In the similar manner, there is another journal, Neuroscience Letter, that also accepts the short length articles, not full length. So then there is another form of article which is known as the review publications or the review article. So most of the time, this is something which I want to share with you. Many times, I have seen, in India also, in other parts of the places also, where people are trying to write more and more review article. I understand that sometimes we don't have the infrastructure and the facilities to carry out the research work. So we tend to focus more on the review papers, right? But the thing is that review papers are mostly written by the experts in that particular field. So if you are working in a particular area doing research for like 10 years, 20 years, and you are known in that particular area, then big journals like Cell, Nature, Science, or other big journals, they will send you an invitation and they will ask you to write a review article. That's a kind of perspective, and known as the solicited review papers or the invited review articles. But there are certain journals, which uh, have the unsolicited or uninvited review process as well, where you think, okay, I'm working in this particular area, and I think that this particular area is moving very fast in this particular direction, which I need to, aware, make aware of the audience. So in that case, you can compile a review paper, and then, most of the time, but people, when they write the review article, they don't understand about the novelty, like how to bring the novelty and what is novelty in the review articles. In full length article, we prepare the new hypothesis and then we make sure that this work is not conducted by someone else. In review article, it has to be done in a very careful manner, because if the same kind of review is published by someone else 6 months back or 2 months back, then there is no purpose of writing the same review article, because the information is already out. And in the review article, you are supposed to write mostly about what is current in that particular field, like what happened in that particular field in the last 5 years or maximum 6 to 7 years, not older than that. Sometimes people are just talking about what happened 20 years back, 30 years back, and then talking about everything, and they're just compiling like a book chapter. So that is not the review article. You have to very make sure that you're talking about the recent updates, the recent research which has been done in that particular field, and nobody has compiled it, recently. So that makes a good review paper. Now, after this, you evaluate your work, and then there are other publications also like editorial, like some commentaries also, right? Those are other forms of publications. And when you are done with this, then you can think whether your work is sufficient for a full article, or your results are thrilling that they should be shown to the audience as soon as possible. If you're not sure whether it is ready for the publication or not, you can ask your supervisor and your colleagues for advice, like on the manuscript type, or where you, because sometimes outside, as an insider, if it is my work, I rarely found any mistake in my work, because it is done by me. But maybe when your supervisor sees your manuscript or your colleagues will read your manuscript, they will find more mistake than you. So this kind of thing should be, taken care, when you're compiling it. Now you have to select how to select the best journal for your article. So you have to again ask this question to yourself, whether the journal is peer reviewed, where you are planning to submit your paper. You also need to make sure who is the audience of the journal. If your article is mostly preclinical in nature, means you have done some animal studies, in vitro work, and there's no human data, then that kind of work is not supposed to be published in the clinical journal. And even clinical journal will not accept it, because the audience are doctors, medical professionals, or the nurses. You want to target the scientist population, right? And that way you need to look after the journal which is more basic science in nature. Okay. You also want to look at what is the average time to print that journal, because you don't want your work to hold for 1 year after you submit it to the journal. So 2 to 4 weeks should be the review time, and then within 2 to 3 months you should be able to get the acceptance of the paper. Journal impact factor is the important criteria, but again, as I mentioned, you should not fall in the rat race, because most of the time people are just trying to make sure that they should publish in as much high impact as they can, compromising all other standards. But if your work is good, Doesn't matter even if it is published in one impact factor journal or a 10 impact factor journal. It will be noticed by the pupil over a longer run if your quality of work is good. So many times it has been happened in the past that many Nobel laureates, their work was not accepted by the big journals like Nature and Science. They have rejected their work. And then they publish their work in some mediocre journal. And later on they receive the highest citations for that work. And the impact factor of journal has increased just because of that individual work. And later on they receive the Nobel Prize as well for that particular work. So work is more important, and publishing it is more important rather than running behind the impact factor line. Deciding on one journal, do not submit to multiple journals. That's a very important point. These days, people are just hungry, for like getting quick publication. And I personally feel that whatever you do, follow the ethics. It's very important in every part of your life, including research. So like submitting a manuscript in more than one journal at one time is unethical behavior. So you submit in one journal and then wait for some time. If they are rejecting your work, then you can submit it to another journal and then wait for their decision. So these are some of the tools which can help you to choose the right journal for your work. So you can go to the elsewhere web page and then you can see, you can copy paste it. So there's a way like you can put the keywords. Based on the keywords also you can get the name of the journal. And there is another tab which publishing process right here. You can copy paste the abstract of your manuscript and then you click on start matching. So it will give you certain name of the journals, or you can also click on search for a journal by name. That is another way to find out the relevant work for your relevant journal for your work. So again, as I mentioned, what makes a good manuscript? It's very straightforward. It should have a clear scientific message which is useful for the society. It has to be written in a logical manner that the reader can follow. Even if he's a layman person, they should also be able to understand your manuscript. I always tell my students whenever I ask them to write a manuscript draft that writing a manuscript is just like making a movie. Just like in a movie, there are different, incidences which are happening, one after the another, but they all are connected to each other. In the similar manner, whenever you are writing any research or review manuscript, all the different paragraphs, they should be well connected with each other. Many times, most of the manuscript, they are rejected because they are different sections of their manuscript, they lack the connectivity, they lack the connection. In one paragraph author is talking something else, in second paragraph without making a connection they are jumping to something else. So that makes a bad manuscript and hard to publish it. You also need to make sure that your manuscript is properly formatted as per the author guidelines, and it should be written in a style that transmit the message clearly. Now, how to structure your article when you are preparing your manuscript? So there are different components to a manuscript, including title, abstract, keywords, followed by introduction, methodology, and finally references and supporting material. We'll discuss about all these, uh, parts of the manuscript one by one, so that you can have an idea like why they are important. If we talk about the title is something which is very important. It should be able to identify the main issue of the paper. It has to be concise. Always make sure that your title is very accurate. It has to be unambiguous, specific, and complete. Most importantly, the title should not be too short and it should not be too long. Many people do this mistake. Either they are making a very small title or a very big title, which is difficult to follow by the audience. So it has to be intermediate in terms of its length. And you should use a professional language. You cannot use any abbreviation in the title of your manuscript. It should be short, catchy. Short means not too short. Catchy, they are often better cited. So this is just an example of one original title, Action of Antibiotics on Bacteria. So this kind of title is never appreciated. The message is not clear what author want to say. So this art title has been reframed into a more appropriate title in this manner. Inhibition of growth of Mycobacterium tuberculosis by streptomycin. Now it is more clear, like here author is talking about a specific bacteria and which is responsible for particular disease, and they are talking about the specific antibiotic which has worked in this particular case. So it has to be optimal in and the message should be very, very clear. If you talk about the keywords, people take it very lightly. They just put the random keywords, but they are very, very important because everybody who is working in your area, your article will pop up in PubMed, Scopus, or any other platform only if you're using the right keywords for your work. Okay, and they're also used by the indexing and the abstracting services. It should be specific and you can use only standard established abbreviation like DNA. You cannot use like non-standardized abbreviations in the keywords. Okay, so like this is the title, an experimental study on evacuated tube of solar collector. So here you can use supercritical CO2, solar thermal, these kind of things, and you can also read the guide to author for identifying how to write the keyword. Abstract, another important part of any research manuscript or review manuscript. It has to be as brief as possible. You cannot talk long stories in abstract. For that, you have the full manuscript, discussion section, conclusion section. Abstract has to be really crispy because it is the soul of your article basically, which has to be presented in a manner that audience can read it quickly and can understand what you have done. So it has to have a combination of like problem, what methodology you have used, what are your key findings, not detailed, only key findings, and conclusion in one line. Make sure it is clearly written, easy to understand, and it has to accurately reflect the content of the paper. So this next part is the introduction section of your manuscript problem. Now many people don't understand what to put in the introduction, what to put in the discussion. Sometimes they are putting the content which are supposed to come in the discussion section, and sometimes they are putting something in discussion which is supposed to come in the introduction. So the good manuscript is always a one which always should be able to put up the problem in a more clear manner, in a more significant manner, and that information is supposed to come in the introduction part of the manuscript where you are explaining the problem on which you have worked. For example, you have worked on certain disease, or you have worked on certain kind of like preparing some kind of device for some critical issues. So there you should highlight the problem at first instance. For example, you are working on Alzheimer, so you should talk about the prevalence of the Alzheimer. You can talk about the current treatment approach of the Alzheimer disease, and then you can talk about what are the limitations of the drugs which are currently available in the clinic, and then you should talk about the what how you're going to solve out that problem. What is your hypothesis? That should be the later part of your introduction section. You talk about the problem, what is your approach, and then what are the existing solutions and the limitation. Then how you're going to sort it out. All this information should come in the introduction section. Next comes the methodology part, which most people think that it's just a copy paste, but it is not a copy paste. Nowadays, plagiarism software they can detect everything, but yes, I understand every time it is very difficult to reframe the methodology sentences. So you can use the methodology from your manuscript, but make sure when you are picking it from someone else's paper, try to reframe the sentences. And you should also have the detailed information about the methodology, what procedures you have used, and these methodology have been adopted from which manuscript. So always give the due credit to the innovators of that methodology, innovator of that particular technique. Always give the due credit to them. That's very, very important in science, that you are giving the due credit to the actual innovators of that particular work. Okay. Use proper notations, including chemical formulas and the symbols, and don't forget to present the controls use. Controls are very, very important. That will talk about the soundness of your methodology. If you're able to present your methodology in a very sound manner, then a reviewer will have more confidence, readers will have more confidence on your work. Next part is the result section. How a result should be. Result is always, uh, about, what experiment you have carried out, and then the data which you are collecting at the end of the experiment. But sometimes, the data is not as you are expecting it, right? So it is always divided into two different components. One is the main data and another is the unexpected findings which you are not expecting, or the additional data. So all the unexpected finding or the additional data, they can go into the supplementary file or the file of secondary importance, data of secondary importance. They can go there. And use always subheadings to keep the results of the same type together and avoid the redundancy. Redundancy means there should not be a repetition of same kind of data again and again. You should be smart enough to understand how you can arrange your data so that it doesn't look in a repetitive manner. If it's same kind of markers you are measuring, and use a proper subheading while explaining the data. And you should also be able to use the figures and the tables for the more efficient and better clear presentations. And statistical analysis is very important part. Many times, students, they complete their PhD and they are just, using some statistical tool based on what their seniors have suggested them, without understanding which statistical tool to use in what particular condition, what situation. So it also needs to be taught to the students. So now what do you see here in this slide? This is a huge iceberg in the middle of the ocean. So the tip of the iceberg is actually the main data which you are presenting in the manuscript. And the whole, like more than 80% of the 90% of the iceberg is beneath the ocean. That is, most of the times comes in the supplementary data as a additional file. That also you can submit as a appendix along with the journal. Okay. So because all this additional and supplementary data is, required, to justify the data which you're presenting in the as a main data in the manuscript. Now, visualization. What could be the best possible way to present your data? It is very important part of your manuscript, because if you don't know how to sell yourself, then probably your data, your result will be very boring to see, boring to read, and nobody will pay attention to this. You need to understand how you should prepare the caption and the legend. They should be self-explanatory to enable the figure to stand alone. If someone is not reading the full manuscript, if they're just reading the caption or the legend of your data figure, they should be able to understand, okay, this work they have done and this is what they have found. You have to maximize the visual versus the space, right? Then color you should use only when they are necessary. Graph should be uncrowded. Data set, should be very well plotted. Axis levels, label size, they should be very clear. If you're using photos, especially immunohistochemistry images or histopathology data, a scale marker is very important. For example, this kind of data, morphology data, right? Symptom image, for example. So their scale becomes very important. If you don't have the scale, then it's very difficult to understand what nanoscale or macro scale you're talking about. Okay. And most important, do not manipulate the image to enhance the result. It comes under the plagiarism. It comes under the cheating. Sometimes students don't understand the repercussion. They just feel that, okay, their figure is not looking very good. It is looking dark. Let's increase the brightness. But no, that is not allowed in science. That is known as, manipulation. So one has to be really taught well, no, not to play with the images. So whatever all the images you are getting, even if it is Western blot data, if it is looking saturated bands, you can run the new blot, new bands, and then present it. But no need to play with the intensity of the bands. Otherwise, that will affect the quality of the figure and the data will not be trusted. Now, you should be able to understand when a data is supposed to come in a form of table. Now, you just imagine, in this case, a person is talking about a lot of different factors, like they're talking about the brain regions and different parameters, and then they are talking about a travel task, and then they're talking about peak activation, then they're talking about superior inferior temporal gyri. So this kind of data is highly complicated. This cannot be presented in a form of paragraph. So this kind of data is supposed to be plotted in a form of table. Okay. But if the data is highly very simplified, like there are two temperature, two experiments, and then just simple experiment, right? So this kind of data can be written in one paragraph. Just growth medium aeration was essential for the growth of S. collicolor. At room temperature in stationary culture, bacterial growth was not measurable, whereas in aerated culture, substantial growth was evident. So this kind of data can be explained in one just paragraph. So you don't need table for this kind of data. But when the data is highly complicated, there's a lot of data present over there, then it has to be presented in a diagrammatic manner, like in the form of table or a figure. Okay. I hope I'm audible to the audience. I'm just going one way.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So then comes the discussion part, which is again the major component of your manuscript, where your job is to interpret the results which you have observed, in your experiments. And this is very important because many times, day before yesterday, my postdoc supervisor was with me from John Hopkins. He was visiting India, and he was telling the same thing to my students during a get together, that many people do this mistake in the result section. They have the results with them, but their results are talking about something else, and in discussion they are concluding something else. They are discussing way opposite to that. So this kind of discussion is very poor, and it will make your manuscript very substandard. So make sure that you make your discussion section very strong, and you just discuss it based on the actual facts and findings you have with you, in the light of the literature which is already published by the other people in that particular area. So your findings has to be discussed in the light of already published literature from other labs. Okay. And then compare the published results with your own. Avoid the statements that go beyond what the results can support. You cannot be over ambitious in just highlighting your results and data. Always use the sentences like, for example, drug A uh, treats the Alzheimer disease. You cannot use this kind of sentence. You have to use drug A may treat the Alzheimer disease. You always have to be modest while making the claims. You cannot make tall claims which are over ambitious in nature, right? Because you have just done one experiment, and based on that you cannot conclude something very concrete. So more research is required both at preclinical and clinical level to conclude something concrete. Until then, you should use the very modest language like, this drug may help in the treatment of this particular disease. Non-specific expressions should be avoided. If there are any new terms not already defined or mentioned in your paper, don't use them. Speculations on possible interpretation that are not rooted in the facts, that should also be avoided in the discussion section. Now, conclusion part. In the conclusion part, you should talk about how your work advances the present state of knowledge. Do not repeat the results or the abstract in the conclusion part. It is generally smaller as compared to discussion section, but here you should talk more about the extension of your findings, extension of your work, how your work is giving direction to the, in this particular field, and what are the application part of your research. You can suggest future experiment, future extension to your work in the conclusion part, and be clear to help the reviewer and editor to judge your work and its impact by highlighting the future applications and suggestions in the conclusion part of your manuscript. Then acknowledgement section, again very important. Many times people take it very lightly, and they just acknowledge the institute, they just acknowledge the funding agency, that's all. And most of the time, if some of your colleague or people sitting in other part of the world, they help you to proofread your manuscript, you are giving them co-authorship. That's not appreciable. If somebody has not contributed in your work experimentally, scientifically, they do not deserve the co-authorship. They deserve the mention in the acknowledgement section. So you should be able to understand, like, when a person is supposed to come under acknowledgement section and when they are supposed to come as a co-author. Okay. Now include the advisor, financial support, or typist. They all can come in the acknowledgement section, right? References, again, very important part of your manuscript, right? So most of the manuscript, were found with the mistakes of references. So and it is very annoying, when reviewers go through it, editors goes through it. So do not inflate the manuscript with too many references, because if you are citing too many papers, that your manuscript becomes bad. So only cite standard number of references like 30 to 40 or 40 to 50 if it is a research article. If it is a review article, depends if it is a mini review or a large review. But don't cite too many papers. Most important, always avoid excessive self-citation. I'm not saying that you should not self-cite your paper. If you're Because you are the one who is working in that particular area, you might have published in the past related to this work. So you can definitely quote your previous work in your publication. But most of the time people find it as a platform of self-citation, where they keep on citing their work more and more in their new papers just to increase their number of citation. But that is highly non-recommendable, because that indicates that you are not pursuing the genuine science. You are just in the rat race, another rat race. And very soon, I have told many people, in the next 5 years and 10 years, many new tools will come up where, there will be like ways, or scientific agencies, funding agencies, they'll be able to exclude the self citations from the actual citations. So then it will be very clear cut. This scientist has this much self citation, and this has this much, other citations. So there will be clear cut distinction in the coming years. So one has to be very careful about it. Genuine. Now submitting your paper, Dr. Ashok, how much time do I have? Yeah.
Sir,
Hello.
you have more 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes
Oh,
maximum.
great, great, great. So yeah, in that time I will finish. Thank you. Okay. So now, once your manuscript is ready and writing is completed, then the submission part. So it is very, very important that before you submit your manuscript, you have to revise it. I still remember when I joined NIPER Ahmedabad in 2016, after coming back from John Hopkins. Their, director was Professor Kiran Kalia that time. So she was having a PhD student who became my student as a co-guide, at that time. So she gave me his two manuscripts, to review and publish. And I was surprised to see that, that manuscript has a lot of mistakes in terms of the scientific content, in terms of, grammatical and technical errors. And that manuscript we had to revise almost 30 times, 30 times. But at the end of the day, we published those manuscripts in very good journals. So initially, the PhD student was very frustrated that sir is asking for so many revisions. But after 1 year, or when the work was published, he was very happy, because in that process, not only he was able to publish his work in a good journal, but in that process, he has himself improved a lot in terms of understanding how the manuscript is supposed to be written. If I don't grill him, or don't tell him like how to, give him a later on, you will have less problem. You will find out that your student will improve a lot, and from next time onwards, he will give you a very refined manuscript, which will save you a lot of time. This is my personal experience I'm sharing with you. So here you can see the situation of this student, like the finally supervisor is like sick of reading this, just submit it when they are satisfied with the manuscript revision. Cover letter is a very important part of your manuscript, which sometimes people ignore, but people don't give it much weightage. But yes, it is true that having a bad cover letter will not be responsible for the rejection of your manuscript. But yes, one thing is very, very clear, that if your cover letter is good, it will accelerate the editorial process for your paper. So you need to put attention to few points. Do not summarize your manuscript in the cover letter. It's very, very important that you have already done in the abstract and your manuscript part. Do not repeat the abstract. It's very important. You only mention what would make your manuscript special to the journal, how your manuscript is fitting into their journal criteria, and how the audience is going to be benefited. So editor is more interested to learn in that aspect, whether this manuscript is of relevance to their journal or not. So put the emphasis on that part. Now, conflict of interest, that's very, very important part actually. Many people don't understand. Many people, many times we just copy like none, NO, none, right? But there are certain instances, when you have to declare your conflict of interest. I know many people, they are having industrial consultancy project. Even we do have some industrial consultancy project here from some US based companies, and you are working in some particular area, publishing it, and then you are not disclosing it. That means sometimes, you're publishing something which can benefit that particular pharma company from which you're taking the money in the form of consultancy. So if you're not disclosing that conflict of interest, that means you may indirectly, supporting the company in favor of that consultancy. So it has to be written very, very clearly in the conflict of interest. Indirect financial, career, intellectual, institutional, personal, there are a lot of factors, which can come under a conflict of interest. And you have to be careful about it. Now, peer review and responding to reviewer. That's the another important part. When your manuscript is submitted, once you hear from the reviewers, many authors, they don't have an idea how to respond to the reviewers' comments. It's just an art, actually. So what you see here, you this is you with your paper in your hand, and what you see here, these are the people, holding different tools, weapons, basically, to stop you, from reaching to a target, which is paper accepted, right? So these are the reviewers and the editors on your way, making sure that you should not reach there so easily. But they are not the barriers, I would say. They are the facilitators. So don't take it as a barrier or as a problem to you, because their job is to make sure that your manuscript is really scientifically refined and is in a form that which is palatable to the audience. Okay, so this whole review process will help your manuscript to refine into a good manuscript. So this is actually happens as a author. When you submit your work, basic requirement, if it is fulfilling, editor will say yes, it will assign this work to the reviewer. If editor thinks that your basic requirement are not fulfilling, for example, you are not referring guide to authors and your manuscript is not as per the guideline, the formatting of manuscript is not as per guideline, a reviewer either may reject it or may ask you to revise, based on the author guidelines. But if it is going to the reviewers, reviewers will, review your manuscript in a predefined manner, and editor generally give the timeline to reviewer as well. Some good journals, they give only 2 weeks, and sometimes it really becomes very difficult for us to review the manuscript in 2 weeks. Every day I'm receiving one or two manuscripts for review. Many times, if it is not belong to my area, I generally decline to review it. But if it is in my area of research, then I accept it. But sometimes it becomes very hard to revert back in 2 weeks, because being a faculty, you have a lot of responsibilities, teaching, research, administrative, those things, right? But yes, you have to find out time in between all those things. So once the reviewer review your manuscript, they can give the recommendation. Recommendation can be anything. If the work is not novel, is not relevant, they can reject your manuscript directly. If they think that okay, there are certain major corrections, if you incorporate them, it can be accepted. They can tell you to revise it basically, and then editor will send it to you with the comments of the reviewers. And based on that, you will revise your paper, then you will submit your paper again. And this sometime, if editor thinks that you have worked on the recommendation of the reviewer, editor can also directly accept it. But if the corrections are major, then editor will send it again to the reviewer for their thorough checking. And once reviewer thoroughly review it, again they can send it for revision again, or they can accept it. But it's very rare that they will send it for revision if you have addressed their comments seriously and genuinely. Now, what reviewers are looking for? What do you think? When you're submitting a manuscript, they are just humans as we are, right? They just have more experience than us. Those who are sitting in that chair, just like us, right? So they're just looking for the novelty in your hypothesis, importance of your hypothesis. They're looking for the originality in your work. They are seeing whether it's a clear progression in the scientific community in that particular field or not, and whether your data, your work is well presented or not. So what you see in the right hand panel is a axis between, it's a graph between, plot between technical quality on the x-axis and novelty on the y-axis. So if your work is technically poor and novelty is also poor, it's a big no, big cross. That means this work cannot be accepted in any way. But if you're very high on novelty, but very poor in technical quality, then also your publication is questionable in eyes of the reviewer. Again, if the your work is very good in technical quality but poor in terms of manual novelty, again this work is questionable whether it will publish or not. But if your work is really novel, really high in terms of novelty, and also technical quality is also high. The chances of acceptance is very, very high. Now, how to respond to the reviewers' comments? What do you see here? There are just certain examples for you to understand how you should not respond and how you should respond. So, just for your example, River has written, the authors failed to reference the work of Smith et al., who solved the problem 20 years ago. Now, this is, for example, you responding to him. Oh, we didn't think anybody had read that. Actually, their solution is better than ours. This is not the way to respond to the reviewer. This is very blunt way. Reviewers are not here to see your bluntness. They're supposed to understand from you. So the correct response is, reviewer raises an interesting concern. However, our work is based on completely different first principles and has a much more attractive graphical user interface. This is how you're supposed to address their query or question. Okay. There are certain other examples which I'm not going through. So these are some of the my review assignments which I'm just putting for your information. I'm sure some of you have already reviewed the manuscripts. You are already a reviewer in some good journals, but some of you might be the beginners. So I'm sure that very soon, who are beginners, if you're working in particular area, you will also be recognized soon, and you will be getting the review assignments from the journals. So this is how they invite you. The Journal of Neuroimmune Pharmacology, then Journal of Ethnopharmacology. They are writing email to you and asking you to review this particular manuscript. These are other review assignment from other journals basically. Okay. So these are some of the publications from my lab which we have published in the past few years. So this paper was published in 2020 in the journal Pain, so which is my area of research, and it is more on the mu delta opioid heterodimers, how they play a role in the neuropathic pain behavior. That is one of the first paper from my postdoctoral research when I was working in John Hopkins. So we published this work in Nature Neuroscience, and then this is another paper, from my lab, and then this is a paper from my first PhD student Ankit Unyal, who is now doing his postdoc in John Hopkins. So he completed his PhD in 2022 from IIT BHU. Now he's working in John Hopkins. These are some other publication which like published in PANAS, which is a very good journal, very high impact journal, and it's a very, very reputed journals. Impact may not be that high; it's like 10 and 11 only, but the journal is really good. It's very difficult to publish here. So this work we have done on the human MRG X1 gene. So there we knock out the rat MRGC receptor with the human MRG X1 gene, and then this is another a review article which published in the Life Science Journal by the another PhD student Akhilesh, who had just submitted his PhD thesis recently. So with these words, I would like to, end my presentation. What you see in this picture is a team of hardworking students. He is Ankit. Ankit is currently doing his postdoc from John Hopkins with Dr. Raja. So Dr. Raja was my postdoc supervisor as well. I did my postdoc with Dr. Raja. So he visited, IIT BHU in 2020 in one collaborative research grant between IIT BHU and John Hopkins. So he just visited, a few days back as well, went to Varanasi. Now today he's flying back to Baltimore. So he's another PhD student, Akhilesh, who just submitted his PhD thesis. Anaga is also another PhD student who worked on chemotherapy induced neuropathy. She also submitted her PhD thesis, recently. Here is Deepak and Somesh. They both are currently pursuing their PhD with me. And these are other students who have completed their work and now working at other places. So thanks to the funding agencies, and finally, I'm very thankful to Dr. Ashok for giving me this opportunity, to interact with all of you today. And if you have any curious questions, I'm happy to answer. So I would like to end my presentation with this quote: anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or 80, while the one who keeps learning, they still forever young. So learning should never end. This is what I feel. This is the beautiful Ghat of Varanasi. If any one of you visiting Varanasi or planning to visit Varanasi, do let us know, and we will be happy to meet you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for the exceptional session. The journey of manuscript writing has expertly guided by you, sir. Your ability to
Thank you.
cover every aspect of the process from research to publication has truly remarkable. On behalf of organizing committee, we would like to present the certificate.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
The second speaker is in the queue.
Okay. Okay. No
So
problem.
I will collect these questions and we'll
Sure.
discuss with you later.
And I request you to kindly, provide me the feedback from the
Yeah,
participants. I would
definitely.
love to hear from you.
Definitely. Definitely. So this is the certificate, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So may I leave the session now?
Yes, sir. Please.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me and for having me with you today. All the best.
Thank you, sir. So for introducing the next speaker, Dr. Hardik Bhatt, sir, I would like to call Dr. Jadhav, sir, to introduce Bhatt, sir.
Good afternoon, Dr. Bhatt, sir. Good afternoon, all the delegates.
Good afternoon.
So it's my privilege and honor to introduce amongst you a great personality, Dr. Hardik Bhatt, sir. Currently, he is working as Associate Professor and Head of Department of Pharmaceutical Chemistry, Institute of Pharmacy, Nirma University, and is also working as Head, Center for Advanced Instrumentation at Nirma University. As far as academic achievement concerned, sir pursued his PhD from Institute of Pharmacy, Nirma University, Ahmedabad in 2009, M.Pharm with first class with gold medal in Department of Pharmaceutical Chemistry at LM College of Pharmacy, Gujarat University, Ahmedabad, and B.Pharm also from LM College of Pharmacy, Gujarat University, Ahmedabad. As far as sir's areas of research and expertise concerned, sir is expertise in synthetic chemistry, mainly in synthesis of novel heterocyclic compound, then microwave-assisted synthesis, molecular modeling and drug design, then spectral interpretation, and pharmacological evaluation of various anti-cancer, anti-HIV, and anti-TB drugs. Sir has total 52 publications in various national and international journals of repute, including 41 research papers and 11 review articles. He also wrote 4 books under his name and published 1 book chapter. His selected publication in the well-known journals, including ACS Sustainable Chemistry and Engineering, having an impact factor of 8.4. Then European Journal of Medicinal Chemistry, having an impact factor of 7.088, and many more. He presented total 110 presentation in various international as well as national conferences. His remarkable achievements including grasping various kind of research projects, research grants. He received major research project from Nirma University as principal investigator and also received a grant more than 80 lakhs from ICMR and Gujarat State of Biotechnology Mission, Government of Gujarat. He also received minor research projects from Gujarat Council of Science and Technology, Gandhinagar, as well as from Nirma University, Ahmedabad. He is a member of various affiliation bodies, including Royal Society of Chemistry, American Chemical Society, IPA, then APTI, ISTE, ISCP, etc. So on the behalf of Sandip University School of Pharmaceutical Sciences, I request Hardik Bhatt sir to address the gathering on the topic how to write research proposal grant, stepwise solution for securing fund. So welcome sir on this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor, for a nice introduction. I will share my presentation and then we'll start.
Yes, sir, definitely.
And I would like to add that sir is not only a great scientist, but a great human being too.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Dhule. Yeah.
Yes.
I hope the presentation is visible.
Yes, sir. Visible.
Yeah, it will be in the presentation mode. Yeah, so I would like to first thank to organizers, Dr. Dhule sir and Dr. Dhule for inviting me to deliver a session on how to write a research proposal grant, so a stepwise solution for securing the fund. Before I quickly go through, I would like to just have a disclaimer that whatever the session I am delivering, that will be solely from my side, and parent organization or any other agencies, they are not responsible for the same. So just to have before we start that how we can proceed for any of the grant writing and we get some of the funding. But this is just one of the cartoon that I would like to discuss. Like the research is solidified, but the findings fundings has vaporized, right? We do lot of research, like the students who are working as a master students or a PhD scholars. Many of the faculty members are also doing very good research. They have very solid their results, outcomes. But if we talk about fundings and when we apply, we do not get any proper response, or what we can say, just to depict that we have very solid research, but we are not getting. And moreover, that when two friends are talking with each other, that one asks that I asked Santa for the research grant, right? So generally we say that whatever you want to have a wish, you can say, and Santa will bring, right, during Christmas. But the second friend is saying that you still believe in research grant. So what the person is believing that Santa will be there, but whether you are believing in research grants or not. But of course, I say yes. Availability of research grants is very less as compared to the number of applicants. So if we say very few people are securing a good funding from a government agencies, specifically from the private universities, it is very difficult to fetch some government grant. But of course, it's not like Santa that you cannot have it. But yes, of course, we can get. So just to have a brief with this, and I would like to give the overview of the presentation. That I will start with the overview, and we'll discuss quickly with some of the introduction and basic requirements. What I will give a major focus on what could be the content for the research proposal that what we submit to the granting agencies, because whatever we want, we should have some of our preliminary work to be with preliminary work which should be already completed, and then we should try to propose the extension of that work so that the granting agency will get some confidence in us that we have done some work, and now we would like to explore that work in a new dimension. So we'll have the various content of the research proposal. Like we should start with the introductory part of the research work. We should give the overview that why we would like to go with this work, what is happening in the world, and with the review of literature, we can give the glimpses of the work which is already been done by the various researchers, not only in the national context, but the granting agency also wants to have some international exposure, and we have to represent that what type of the work is already been completed, and then we can correlate it with our rationale and aim of objective, that what we want to achieve and what are the various steps we will follow as objective to achieve that. The major focus with with the granting agencies, they were given with the research design and methods, what we would like to propose in terms of materials and method, how we are going to progress, what are the bases, how we are correlating with our proposed research work, what are the methodology we will use, whether the methodology are acceptable at an international level, or whether they are the robust and giving a correct results output or not. So all such parameters are considered by the granting agencies, and for some of the granting agencies like ICMR, we have to go with some ethical consideration also. The human ethics committee also, we have to get some clarification, or animal ethics committee, or we should provide some of the approval so that they will have some faith in us that whatever study we are going to propose, it will be having a good output. Of course, budget is very important aspect, because that's what we want from the granting agency and how budget and its justifications help us to get it. And the attachment or the some of the appendix or the document that we need to attach and the citation. So overview will be given at the end of, we'll start with that. So a very typical picture that when you are writing or research grant, uh, typically we have to do many works. It's not that it is only a typical writing process. We can write something like essay and we would like to have a submission process like students write the answer in the examinations. It's not like that. Principal investigators are always on toes when they initiated with some thought to write a grant and up to the submission of the grant. Of course, after having some comments or maybe for the presentation or maybe acceptance, it will be a huge task later on. But a submission of a research grant is also a very critical, and it is a very multitasking or it's a challenging task. So that and it is always a constantly evolving trend, right? We need to do a lot many work, and it should be like a blueprint, like we what we want to perform our study, and once it is completed, the research project should flow smoothly. So these all aspects should be covered, and overview of a grant, whenever we are writing overview, then it should cover each and every aspect, so that while reading of the overview, the evaluator of our research grant should not miss any points that we would like to highlight. We should be very smart, right? We can say that nowadays the lengthy proposal or a detailed proposal is not so important as it is important like that we should have a smart proposal. So if we can say that a clean or well thought proposal is a backbone, and if we talk about smart, it's not about the smartness of the principal investigator or the team, but it is smartness. If we talk about smart, then our research proposal must be very specific. What we would like to do with this grant, we should be very specific. Whatever we are proposing, it must be measurable. If the proposals or the objectives what we are writing are grant, if it is not measurable, it is very difficult to convince the reviewer of the grant to get funding for us. Attainable, obviously, how we are going to attain that, and what will be the outcome of that. Realistic is a very major concern. Many of the time, it is a major problem with the grant content is that we are going to submit a hypothetical proposals, and which is very difficult to have some realistic output. So even though you are writing very specific and narrow outcomes, it's fine, but it should be very realistic, so that the reviewer of the grant proposal should get some idea that yes, whatever the outcomes will be there, it is going to be a real outcome, and which may be further explored in future. Time frame is very essential, because the grant writing or grant acceptance is very time bound. If we are asking for 1 year or maybe 2 year or 3 years research grants, then our timeline should be fixed in a way that it must be completed within that time frame. So the application must be a time frame. We have to give a specific timeline that for every 3 months or every 6 months, not more than that. Every objective should be divided. If you can divide your proposal in a 3 months timeline, it will be very good, so that your whole 3 years means 36 months of your duration of the project would be subdivided into 3 months of each, right? If not, then at least for 6 months, you must have to bifurcate your works. That for first 6 months, we are going to recruit some of the GRF or SRF or the research associates you would like to work in your research project. You would like to have some updated research review, or you would like to procure some of the things, or if you would like to do some computational studies. Like if I talk about the chemistry project, which I generally deal with, then for first 6 months, we generally keep for a certain type of the work time frame, and then for remaining 1.5 years, we keep for the synthetic part, for synthesis, for characterization, because it took a lot many time, and we are not sure, right, whether we are going to get the compound or not. Sometimes it happens that after working for a couple of months also, when we send one product, we do not get exact output in terms of HRMS, spectra or NMR, and we have to restart or we have to rethink on our research methodology or process. So time frame is very essential whenever we are submitting, and all these 5 points must be interconnected with each other to get a good output. Now, before we start writing any grant proposal, we have to go through some of the basic aspects. So these are the points that are not related with any of whatever is the research work what we are going to propose, but what it is generally related with what type of the granting agencies. Like we have to get the proposal guidelines. If you are interested in, or if you already have done any of the grant submission, then you must be knowing that the different granting agencies are having different formats. So first we have to understand what are their guidelines. Nowadays, many of the national granting agencies, like if we talk about DST, SARB or DBT or ICMR, they are perfectly online, but some of the requirement, what they want, they are typical for with them. So we have to understand what is the guideline for particular granting agency. Review the eligibility requirements. Many of the times, the document for invitation from the granting agency is of couple of pages, and generally we go through quickly, and we may miss some of the point at that time. So eligibility requirements are very essential, whether they are asking for small grants, whether they are asking for a bigger grants. Right now, currently, from the ICMR, 2 types of the grants are available, where the first grant deadline, it is for a very small amount, which is going to end on 14th March. But the second type of the granting, which is asked by the ICMR, is going to end on 21st or 22nd March, but it will be a higher amount. So whether you are falling in which type of the requirements, we should quickly we should go in the requirement in detail, and then we can highlight and we can further go through it. Identify or match or the leveraging requirements. Right? We should identify what we can take the benefit of the requirement and how we can proceed, whether they are asking for some of the collaborative works, whether a multi-institutional work is required or this a single institution, what type of the requirements are there, we must have to go through it. Submission deadlines are very essential, because if we do not keep a watch on that, then it is mostly possible that we may miss the deadlines. And obviously on the last day or a day before, there is a huge rush in submission. So it is advisable to submit your grant online portal before a day. Determine personal needs, what we want, and whether our needs are going to be fulfilled by the granting agencies or not, if they are typically for the clinical types of the project, and if we ask for a very basic research work, then it is very difficult. So we need to go through it, and other administrative requirements, because sometimes the granting agency requires some type of certification or approvals from our institution or maybe from the collaborative institutions. Sometimes like ICMR wants to have some animal ethics approval before we want to submit any proposal. So we should have, we shall go through the administrative requirements before we start submission or before the end date of the granting. So these are some of the basic requirements that we should follow. Now there are a few of the terminologies that for the granting agency generally we should keep in mind, right? So site, like we should have to keep a primary focus on the literature pertinent to that of the research problem. We always have to cite the work which is correlated with our work, and it is advisable that the current research work which should be done within last couple of years, we should mention, which is having a very good output, so that we can correlate the current situation, current need with our output. Compare, right? What the authors are agree on, whether if I am submitting any granting in any grant, then I should compare what I want and what is existing or what is available, what to do with the author agrees on, and who applies similar approaches to analyzing the research problems. It's not that the research funding that I am submitting, I am the alone who is working in that area. Many people are the researchers, not only in particular region, but throughout India or an international level also they are working. So who different types of people are working in particular area and what are their outputs. If I am working for particular target, what is the current research work is going on, or maybe we can cite some of the published literature work and we can compare that this is the current work, it is almost completed, and now these are the lacking. So I would like to fulfill that lacking. I would like to take my research work in particular direction. So comparison with the currently available research at global level is very essential. Contrast is the requirement. What are the major areas of disagreements, controversy, or the debate? Right. We have to contrast whatever is been published or whatever we want like to highlight. So this is various arguments are there, or we can use themes or methodologies or approaches, and the controversies which are expressed in the literature should be contrasted. Sometimes some people are reporting particular output. We can contrast with them that we also have carried out some of the basic, and we contrast with that output, and we would like to prove our work. So some of the major, but what I would like to say that when we are contrasting any of the published literature or the outcomes, we should be very precise, and with some of the evidence only we can contrast. Otherwise, the vague words should not, or the vague idea should not be depicted or the written in the grant writing. Critique for the literature is very essential. Which arguments are more persuasive and why? Which approaches, findings, and methodologies seem most reliable? And we have to pay attention to all types of the verbs when we describe our research proposal. So we can critique to any of the literature, but whenever we are writing any statements, whenever we are contradicting anything, we should be very precise to in a grant writing. How does our work withdraw upon or depart from or to synthesize what has been said in the literature? How we are going to connect? What will be the theory or what is the outcome which has already been reported, and how we are going to connect with our outcome with certain type of the disease condition which are going on, like after 2019 December or from 2020, lot many granting agencies are asking for the proposal for the COVID. But then how we are going to connect our output with that certain type of the disease condition which is asked by them? If granting agencies are asking for a broad areas like infectious disease, non-infectious disease, then what type of the grant proposal we would like to write and how we are going to connect with it? So, so that is very essential to understand. If you talk about some of the basic requirements before we write, then our proposal needs to show that what is the already known about the topic and what new paradigm will it be add. So if there is no novelty in our proposal, if we are not going to add any new knowledge or the work in particular area, then it will be very difficult for us to convince the reviewer of the granting agencies. And so our proposal must be capable of convincing the evaluation committee about the credibility, right? We whatever output we are showing or whatever the methodology we are showing in our granting proposal, it should be having a credibility. Whether we can achieve or not, there is again a big question. If we are writing only hypothetical outcomes and it seems from the reading of the proposal that it's not achievable, then at a stretch they will reject our proposal. So achievability is also essential. Whether practically we can perform the work, whatever we have mentioned in grant or not, that is also important. And reproducibility, whether what we are going to perform and we are going to have output with other people when they perform, whether they will get some reproducible result or not. So that all aspect must be included in the research design. Right. We basic requirements are very essential. We have many of the thought in our mind, like the lady is saying, okay, the writing shouldn't be so hard. It is very easy. So we have a lot of thought in our mind. But when we start actually writing, right, it's just to have a transfer of the thought from the brain to the computer. Right. It's been shown in the picture. It is just a 24-inch away, a computer screen from the brain, but it is very, very difficult that whatever we would like to have in our mind, we should convert it into the words, because if we do not convert our thought process, our imagination into the particular word, which is achievable, reliable, or which could be practically demonstrated, then we can say that it is the most impossible short distance in the history of humanity to write a proposal or converting a thought into the proposal. So basic requirement is we have a thought. Yes, it's fine. We have a good thought, but how we are converting a good thought into the writing proposal so that the proposal could be practical, it could be a persuasive, it should make a broader links, it should aim for the crystal clarity, and we should plan before we write. These are very basic points that we should take under consideration before we start writing of any of the proposal. The aim of researcher should be clearly stated in a simple language that describes the research in a way that a non-specialist can comprehend without the use of jargons. And it is very easy that we should be writing a proposal in a very, very balanced way. Now, just to go through quickly what should be the content of the proposal. And before that, we would like to have a cover letter, because a cover letter is the first impression we are going to give to the reviewer, and you are going to have so in the proposal we should have a very precise title should be very precise, whatever you want to do, but it should cover all aspects of your proposal. If I'm going to design some of the molecules, if I am going to synthesize, characterize, and then I have to do like for an example, anti-cancer activity, and if I would like to work on the mTOR or PI3K as a pathway. But if I try to write a broad title and instead of writing very precise pathway, I just write anti-cancer agents, it is a very broad word, and nowadays the granting agencies are not accepting such proposals. If I would like to synthesize any molecules, if it would be very good that I can precisely write 1 or 2 ring systems, because they will come to know that yes, I have a very basic understanding about the topic. I have already done little work, and now I'm going to get the work in an advanced level. So title of the proposal is very, very essential to be short, specific, and very precise, and it should give the idea to the reviewer what is overall about the project proposal. Obviously, we should have the details about principal investigator. We may have multiple principal investigators from the different agencies also, or the same institution. We can have a few co-investigators, and we should have all the types of the institutional details. Now, when we start writing the content for the research proposal, few points are there that we should take under consideration. Obviously, the few granting agencies are not following this type of the format, but they are having their own format for a grant. They are also having specific wording limit, so we should strictly follow that. So basic thing is whenever we can prepare our proposal in this particular way, or a format, like we start with the title and we have some preliminary information, and then we can divide our research proposal in different topics. Like we can start with the introduction, literature review, aim and objectives, research design methodology, ethical consideration, budget, appendices, and the citations. So or the reference is what we can say, right? So we can overall divide, or we can prepare our proposal. But if any particular granting agency is having that typical requirement, then we must have to follow, and we have to add our content as per the format. We have a lot of thought, right? When we start with the introduction part, we should have to cover a lot many aspects. What we would like to do, how we are going to perform, and what will be the current scenario. What will, if in the healthcare, we must have to give an overview from the WHO. What is the statistics? What are the disease? What are the conditions that WHO has given in its latest report? And the introduction part must cover the latest information. We cannot say that WHO has given in 2015 report so and so information about about our work. No, we cannot give a very old information. So as an introductory part for particular disease, its condition, its epidemiology, we must have to give some of the current reports. For particular disease, various other reports are also available at the international level. So we must have to follow that. After that, as we are applying to the Indian granting agencies, we must have to go through the ICMR, Indian Council on Medical Research, and they are also frequently publishing reports during particular years. So we should also cite the latest report, and we should get some information that what is the disease condition and the epidemiology or etiology of that conditions in context of India or maybe in particular region, and we can depict that. So first we have to start with the need of the study or the abstract, and that is the initial pitch. How we are going to convince the reviewer that our project is having some stuff, and they will go in detail to understand, and how we can convince them to give us the funding. So it should be conveyed to the reader and what you want and what necessitates the study and your passion about the topic. So even though the disease condition or the research area is very much in demanding, but if our proposal is not going to produce any necessity for the work, or maybe we cannot show our passion for a particular topic, then the reviewer will not accept our proposal. So the initial pitch as the introductory part of the proposal is very, very essential. Along with that, we can also give the background and the significance of the particular research work. So granting agency generally expect at least last two questions, like introduction should contain the hypothesis of the research design, and if the hypothesis cannot be constituted, then a line of inquiry, that if we cannot have a hypothesis, then we can keep some lines so that it will create the inquiry for particular research work to be indicated. So background and significance is very, very essential. After we write the introduction part, we should also provide some of the recent review of the literature, right? We nowadays many informations are available. The professors who have already who completed that PhD work before a decade, or maybe we can say before 15 years, they must be knowing that at that time we were not having any of the electronic sources for the literature review, and chemical abstract are the only one source that we have to go through in details. And for literature review nowadays, the researchers are working for a few hours or a few days only to get some information through the search engines. But before a couple of years, we have to go through the couple of weeks and couple of months into the library, and we have to refer to various literatures. So that's why I try to show over here that not only technology or the e-devices are not enough to get some information, but we should also read a lot many literature if it's available in a library, and we should refer to all sources of scientific evidence which are possible to get some base. Now, when we are representing our literature review, it doesn't mean that it should be so lengthy that the reviewer will get bored in just reading the review of literature. So we should be very precise. If the granting agency are asking us for having an international review as well as for the national review, we should be very precise. If they have not given any word limit, then it should be we should cover a little work which are carried out within last couple of years for international and for national level. We can also cite various scientists who are working in particular area to get the diversification. But yes, it is very crucial that this structure of section must be intelligently produced into the proposal, so that we can correlate the available literature, and then at the end of review literature we can produce a rationale that how all type of the work it's already been done, but still we would like to demonstrate our work to be a better than that work, so that our work is original and innovative and it is going to benefit the society. So we have to get the progression, or we can move from the more general to the more focused study. And 5C is what we have discussed earlier, that is cite, compare, contract, critic, and connect. So this all must be connected very well in a review of literature. Now, after writing a review of literature or concluding having a rationale to work in a particular area, we must have to get some hypothesis, and to get the hypothesis we should write an aim. So aim is it should be connected with the hypothesis, and to achieve that aim we have to follow certain objectives, and objectives could be correlated with the parameters or the tools to be used to achieve that aim. So generally, we can have one aim for our study, and to achieve that aim, we can follow multiple objectives. Now, research design and methods. So what we say in that particular context is the material and method. In a very simple terminology, we can say that. And so it should be unmistakably tied to the specific aim of a study. Whatever material, method in detail we are writing in our research proposal, everything, every aim and everything must be correlated with the aim of our study. If we deviate from our study, if any of the objectives are not directly correlating with the aim, then it will be very difficult to convince the reviewer of the granting agencies. So overall, as I said, we can say it's material and method what we would like to have. So typical information we should add in this in this section of the grant is the population of the sample. If you talk about a clinical trial, or if you talk about any disease condition, then population here it consider as all types of the elements, like if we have individual or the objects or the substances. So the inclusion and the exclusion criteria should be clearly defined. What we would like to include in our work, what we would like to exclude. Very typical and direct information must be added in this section. Data collection is very essential, and generally we are expected to give a detailed account on the methodology which we are going to adopt to collect the data, right? Sometimes we have to collect some of the basic information in various then with this basic information, whether we are going to collect the data in particular region or not, or what type of the variety of the data we are going to collect. Along with that, whether the methodology should be tested for its validity or not, whether if we want to collect some data, if we go in particular region and we collect the data, if we collect data electronically, what will be the validity of the data? So data collection is not very easy, but we have to verify the validity of the data also. We must also have to anticipate and acknowledge any potential barriers or the pitfalls if we carry out any of the research design, and we explain plans to address them. So if we are going to encounter any issues, then we should be ready that during the data collection, we are going to do such type of the methodology. And if we face some issues, then we will have the solutions. Rigor, that is the soundness of the research, is very essential. It must be reflected throughout the proposal. So that addresses the strength of the research with respect to the neutrality or consistency and applicability. We cannot deviate from the rigorous output of the research work, and we have to maintain it. Neutrality, it refers to the robustness of the research methods against the bias. Our research methodology, our output, our conclusion must be neutral, and whatever the output we observe, it must be robust. So neutrality of the methodology is very essential. If any of the method that we indicate in our research proposal is biased, or if it doesn't give any neutral output, then there are chances that the granting agency reviewers may reject. Consistency is very essential because it considers whether the finding will be consistent and if the inquiry will be replicated with the same participant. So if we talk about a synthetic method, then if I propose any of the synthetic method to synthesize any of the compound, then any people, whosoever are following that, whether consistently they are obtaining the similar results or not. So consistency in material and method is very essential. Applicability refers to the degree to which the findings can be applied to the different context and the group. So how in research and methodology, how we can apply it with the different types of the context. After writing a brief about material and method, whenever we are getting some data, how we are going to do the analysis of the data, because doing a lot many work is a very different thing, but to analyze the data in a particular direction so that we can reduce and reconstruct the data, and doing it analysis is very essential. For biology studies, or for our molecular biology studies, we have to get lot many raw data, but all of the raw data are not so essential or to report into the file, right? So we have to analyze all types of the raw data, we have to conclude that raw data and we have to correlate it with one of the output that should be indicated. So data analysis is very, very critical, and we have to explain the steps to be adopted for coding or sorting of the data. For an example, I will just give you very quick example that if I'm working in the area of analytical method development, then if I'm doing a validation of any particular analytical method, then many raw data are there, like for accuracy, for precision, for repeatability, reproducibility, intraday, many data I need to perform, and then we need to collect the data and need to analyze. But when we are writing the validating parameters for particular method, we have to write only particular value, whether it is falling under the particular range or not. So collection of the data is very critical, but along with that, the analysis of that data is also very essential, and we cannot avoid the data analysis. So sometimes if we have to do some of the statistics analysis, then we can mention also the statistician who are going to help us, and also we can mention the suitable software. Nowadays SPSS or many other softwares are available which we are using to analyze our data, and we have to provide the data with a range of particular significance in a mostly in the output of pharmacology output. We have to show the data whether they are in a significant, they are below significant, or they are higher significance. So that type of the statistical output are very essential, and so data analysis is very critical. Sometimes for medical research or for ethical consideration, we have to do certain consent studies, and for we have to provide the consent forms also, and all such information are falling under the ethical consideration that we have to provide while we are submitting the proposal. Now, budget is very constraints part. Then what we have to propose, like the picture depicts that the Newton also struggles to write the economic impact section of his gravity proposal, right? So we have to write and we have to express the proposal in such a way that it should predict and cost all the aspects of the research work. We cannot skip or we cannot avoid any of the budgetary requirement that we require. Even if we want to have a small work to be carried out, we have to mention that typically in our studies, and we cannot avoid that. Just a minute. Yeah. And whatever the budget, like if we want to have one JRF in our project work, if you want to have a 2 JRF or SRF, if you want to have a research associates, every budgetary heads must be justified. If we can have a different types of budget, like we can have a recurring budget, we have non-recurring budgets, right? If we want to purchase any of the instrumentation or accessories, again we need to justify whether this type of the accessory are going to help in our work or not. Many of the time the granting agencies are asking to provide the list of requirements or the list of the instrumentation which are available at our university or the institute. We have to provide them, and we have to provide the justification whether these are going to be helpful or not. And when we are asking for a new instrumentation, at that time also it should be it is our responsibility to provide justification whether if I want to purchase a new instrumentation or accessory or a software, how it is going to helpful in particular project, and not only as after completion of the project, how it is also going to be benefited to the various researchers of the university. So non-recurring and recurring budget also we need to justify. So each and every budgetary aspects, whatever we ask in a various budget heads, it is our or the PI and co-PI responsibility to justify that. It is just the document that supports our proposal and the application. So any additional documentation, if you want to support that we have some expertise or we would like to have any of the additional attachment, then we can provide as appendix. And citation is very essential. Generally, it can be referred as a references, or maybe we have the wording of bibliography. Right? Generally, they are having a different meaning, but generally during the grant writing, we use the interchangeability, but of course, it all references that what we are used, we must have to write in a research proposal, and it should be very well written. So lastly, what I would like to say that the proposal should follow a discernible logic from the introduction to the presentation of the appendix, right? Logically, we have to write the proposal. When we start with any of the idea, when we grow the idea in terms of introduction or literature review, and then lastly, when we conclude in terms of material and method and the outcomes, it should be in a particular logic form. And if we cannot connect all the dots, we cannot have a particular picture to be depicted. So whenever we are writing any research proposal, we have to connect all the dots, and then we have to propose what we want, and hopefully it is, we get some grant agencies to convince. And many of the time it is happening that we fund only those proposals we cannot understand. So it may happen that we are not, this may happen, right? We are applying for many grants to the various granting agencies, and as if you talk about private universities or private institution, it is very difficult to get the funding from the government granting agencies. Or else if we discuss in some of the scientific sessions or with our friends that it is very easy to get the funding if you are working in a government institution. This may happen. Sometimes we also feel that whatever we are writing, they are not considering. But it's not the case. We should keep trying. We should not lose any hope for writing of the grant, and continuously our effort should be done, and hopefully we should try to get some fundings. Just to list out few of the funding agencies like national grant agencies, there are few of the agencies are also there like UGC, DST, SARB have depicted over this slide. Last line, it's about GUSCO, so GSBTM. So this is Gujarat State Council on Science and Technology and Biotechnology Mission. So similarly, every state has their own Science and Technology Council. So we can also apply for a small grant to our state councils, or else all such are the national grant agencies, which where our research work or where our research proposal aligning, we may explore the possibilities. There are certain granting agencies which are available, which are there at the international levels, like we have Wellcome Trust, we have the Royal Society also. Some of the times Gates Foundations are there, so we can apply for international grants. Sometimes the science and technology department of two countries are collaboratively producing some of the grants, whether like for an example, Indo-Italy or maybe Indo-Germany. So at that time, we have to find out our collaborator from, or we should be in touch with the collaborator from other country. And if such grant opportunities are available, we may also apply for such grants. So various grant agencies are there. Lastly, I would like to thank to the organizers of this e-FPD program, specifically Dr. Dhule and Dr. Dhule for inviting me to deliver a session. I would also like to thank Nirma University and few of the granting agencies which have funded various projects of more than 80 lakhs rupees. And I also thank to DST Inspire, ICMR and Nirma University for providing fellowship to the PhD scholars who have done a preliminary work. So based on that, we can apply for a further work, and we get the grants from the various agencies. And thankful to the many people who are starting from the guru and from the faculty colleagues or the collaborators who are helping me or guiding me, and all the students who are working in the various projects. This is the institution where I work in Nirma University, and I'm also heading the Center for Advanced Instrumentation, which is the analytical facility. Thank you. Any questions?
Participant, anyone?
Yeah.
Please post your question in the chat box. Okay. So thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful session. We have been fortunate to witness a presentation that has not only enlightened us, but also inspired us to deliver deeper into the world of grant writing. On behalf of organizing committee, we would like to present a certificate of honor to you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you
Your
very much.
voice is cutting. I'm not getting. Hello?
Just wait, sir.
Yeah.
So is it visible now? Internet connections. So is it visible?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank
I
you.
will send a feedback along with the photographs to you, sir, on the personal mail. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dear participant, please fill the feedback form posted in the chat box.